structure of the vacuum. Why did I want to know about that? Because if I understood the structure of the contractive part of the vacuum, then I understood the geometry of the foundation of creation. Do you guys follow me there? Because if that's what creates, if that's the general active thing, that's the thing that holds things together, then that's the key to the force of creation of all things. If you have a sphere or a ball on the end of a rope and you spin the rope, you're going to feel a force outside pulling away from your hand, right? That is not a true force. It's called centrifugal force. It's not a true force because the only reason that force is occurring is because the ball is attached to the rope, which is attached to your hand. The centripetal force, the force that's holding the ball to the center, is what's making it go in a circle. Without the string, the ball is going straight and there's no force. You guys follow me? So actually the force that holds to the center is the primary force from which the illusionary radiation occurs. Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, that has huge implication in philosophy as well. Because if you go inward deeper and deeper, then you would expect more and more radiance to occur. Because you have a feedback relationship between the internal gravitational collapse and the external expansion of the electromagnetic field. So I was really excited about that, but I didn't know what was the geometry or the structure of the collapse. I knew one thing, is that the geometry of the collapse had to be in equilibrium. So I looked and I thought, well, if the sphere is the highest volume possible, which it is, then the geometry, so it's the highest volume possible because it's expanding, right? Then the geometry of the collapsing vacuum must be the smallest geometry possible. The smallest volume, the volume that's collapsing. And that is a tetrahedron. Everybody here knows what a tetrahedron is? Okay. While I'm traveling, it's kind of hard to bring all my models. But this is a double tetrahedron. Okay, there's two there. Actually, there's 8 making an octahedron in the middle. But we're not going to get too complex here. If you have a tetrahedron, you have 4 faces, 4 equilateral triangle faces. It's like a pyramid with a triangle base. Okay? It's like 3 triangle faces with a triangle base. It's the smallest volume possible. And thus, that had to be the final geometry of the collapse. Well, you know, when I was thinking about these things, it was almost 15 years ago, there wasn't people, like if you go in Sedona right now, you know, like, or, you know, Burning Man or whatever, you know, there wasn't people going around with tetrahedrons on their heads and like living in tetrahedron houses, and, you know, having tetrahedron cars and stuff like that. You know, at that time, nobody even knew what the heck was a tetrahedron. I mean, it was not so common, although, you know, that comes all the way back from the Pythagorean school and then Plato schools and so on. So I was, at the age of 16, after all my encounters with current physics and so on, I decided I was done. And it's great because I just went to the Einstein exhibit in New York and found out that Einstein did the exact same thing and quit school at 16. But I was, I couldn't keep doing this. I was just running into troubles everywhere I went. And so I started to teach skiing. Because I was a good skier, I figured I can live that way and do research at night. So I was doing research at night and skiing every day, teaching skiing, being in nature. And I was like, well, after years of skiing, I taught skiing for 15 years. I became one of the top ski instructors in Canada. I was one of the 20 top ski instructor in Canada, ski coach. And I was very successful. And I was going from Canada to Australia, New Zealand in the summer to do their ski season there. And then back to Canada. And then back to Australia. And then back to Canada. And I was freezing my butts out. I had no time to unfreeze. I had like a week and a half to 2 weeks on, Fiji Island, in between seasons. And I was just not cutting it. So after a while of doing that, I got tired of it. And one summer I said, that's it. I ain't teaching skiing again this summer. I'm going to teach scuba diving. So I'm, decided to thaw out one summer and teach scuba diving. And I had been scuba diving since I was a young kid. So I knew I could teach scuba diving. So I opened a map and I thought, okay, I got to be south of the border. It's got to be extremely hot. And so I took a map of Mexico and I found this little island called Isla Mujeres. And I thought, wow, I was a ski instructor. Island of the women, man. That sounds good to me. So I decided I was going to go to Isla Mujeres. So I went down there and I got a job as a dive master. And I started to, dive master down there. And I learned a lot and all this. And then one day, I had a day off. And I decided to go for a little expedition. And I hadn't seen the pyramids, so I decided to go to Chichen Itza. The pyramids of Chichen Itza. Well, it's like you get in the bus, I had to take the ferry from the island. I got in the bus, with the chickens and the pigs and everything. And I'm going through the jungle, for hours. And then finally, you see these pyramids sticking out of the jungle. In the middle of nowhere. And it's like, huh? And they're like these huge monuments. And I get onto the site and I'm walking around and I'm like going, wow, how did this get here? So I'm climbing on top of the pyramid and I figure I meditate on it, so I'm sitting down, I'm trying to meditate, and sure enough, as soon as I close my eyes, I hear, a group of tourists coming off the stairs on the other side with a tour guide. I'm like listening, trying to meditate. And, and I'm listening to this tour guide. And the tour guide is saying how, all the rocks were cut in the quarry over the mountain range we see in the distance. And that they were carried from there, cut with copper tools, and then carried from there on with vine ropes on logs across the mountains, across the jungle, down the mountains into Chichen Itza, and then assembled into this amazing monument we were standing on. I'm listening to this and I'm going, really? And then he mentioned that actually the monument was actually carved and cut perfectly so that on the solstice every year, when the sun rises, it casts a shadow of a snake going up the stairways, and the snake head is carved on the bottom, and it really works. And I'm listening to this and I'm like, wait a minute. That doesn't sound right. These people, like thousands of years ago, were going around with huge stones across jungle, across mountain range, right? And like putting them in this perfect building that's amazingly well aligned to astronomical events. And it's not like you can build the pyramid and then like get Joe up there and get, okay Joe, the sun's rising now. Okay, pick it up now. Okay, a little bit to the left. You can't do that. You gotta calculate that stuff in advance. And those are not simple calculations. Those are very complex. Just happens that most of these buildings we find around the world are pyramidal. Most of these enigmatic buildings are pyramidal, and most of them are aligned with incredible accuracy to astronomical events. So as I was listening to this, and I'm a climber as well, and I know rock, and I know that you can't cut rock with copper. And I find out later on that archaeologists say, oh well, they had a way to temper the copper so it became hard. And I was like, okay, can anybody else do that? No. You mean that with all the millions of dollars that are invested in research and metallurgy, nobody is able to harden copper, but the ancient people thousands of years ago could do it? The other thing is that, have you ever tried to pull rocks on logs in the jungle with vine ropes? And now, you're talking about people that didn't have the pulley. So now you gotta stack these rocks to make your pyramid without a pulley. That didn't sound right to me. Just because I'm a type of a logical person. And I was standing on top of this pyramid, kind of scratching my head, going, oh my God, that doesn't sound right. There's got to be some mystery we're missing here. And then it hit me. It's like, wait a minute. This is a pyramid. And there's pyramids all around the world from these ancient civilizations. Why were they all building the exact same geometry? Why didn't they make a cube? What's going on? What's with this pyramidal thing? And I thought, okay, maybe this is a long shot, but maybe they knew something about the fundamental structure of the vacuum. Maybe they knew something about the logos of reality, the fundamental structure from which everything emerges. And maybe pyramids are involved in that. So when I got back home, at the time I lived at Whistler, Canada, a big ski hill, I went to my local library. Well, in a ski resort, library is not, so elaborate. But I was looking for information about ancient civilization, and the first book I came across was titled